Nicole Daniels stepped off the plane with tired eyes, but a hopeful heart. 47 years old, a nurse from Maryland, she had crossed an ocean for a chance at love. The night air was heavy, the crowd restless, and her phone buzzed with a text. "I'm waiting outside." She believed she was walking toward a new beginning. But in truth, she was walking into a story that would end in fear, betrayal, and questions that still haunt everyone who knew her. Welcome to Evil Crime Cases. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. Please like and share our videos. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section. Now, let's get back to the details of the case. Nicole Daniels stepped off the plane, carrying more than just her luggage. She carried years of longing, years of unanswered prayers, and a fragile hope that love, real, lasting love, was finally within reach. At 47, Nicole had built a steady life back in Houston. She worked long shifts as a nurse, raised her child with care, and never once allowed hardship to crush her spirit. Yet when the house grew quiet, when her child was grown and the night settled in, she often felt the weight of loneliness pressing against her chest. She wanted more than survival. She wanted companionship. She wanted to be seen. That September evening, as she stepped into the thick, humid air of Lagos, Nicole believed she was stepping into a new chapter. She had told friends this was her moment, her chance to find happiness after years of sacrifice. For months, she had exchanged messages and calls, hearing promises that she was cherished, that she was wanted, that her life could finally be full again. Her heart swelled with the excitement of being chosen, of being pursued. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream. She imagined walking hand in hand through crowded streets, hearing laughter that wasn't forced but free. She thought of quiet dinners, of waking up with someone beside her who wouldn't leave. For Nicole, this trip wasn't just a journey across continents. It was a chance to heal an emptiness she had carried for far too long. And so, when her phone buzzed with a text that read, "I'm waiting outside," she smiled. To her, it was proof that love had finally found her, that the years of sacrifice, heartbreak, and disappointment had led to this. Someone waiting, someone wanting her. Nicole believed she was walking toward a new beginning. But what she could not know in that moment was that she was also stepping into something far more dangerous, an unfolding story that would test the very limits of her faith, her strength, and her will to survive. Nicole White had always been the kind of woman people turned to for help. As a nurse, she gave her energy to healing others, patients, coworkers, even neighbors who leaned on her when they had no one else. But the moment she closed her front door at night, the silence swallowed her. Her house sat on a quiet street in Houston. 2 bedrooms, one kept perfectly neat for guests who rarely came. The glow of her phone lit the living room when she scrolled late into the night. From the outside, it looked like stability. Inside, it felt like absence. Nicole had been married twice, each ending leaving its own scar. The first time, she discovered a text message on her husband's phone. Just 3 words from another woman. "Miss you already." It told her more than any argument ever could. The second marriage ended slower, death by distance. Dinners eaten in silence, promises made but never kept. And the moment she realized she was the only one trying to keep the flame alive, she poured herself into work after that. 12-hour shifts, double shifts, anything to fill the hours. Her coworkers admired her strength, but strength is often just a mask. At night, when she pulled off her scrubs and looked in the mirror, she saw the loneliness she tried to hide. What she wanted wasn't extravagant. It wasn't money. It wasn't luxury. Nicole wanted a hand to hold in the quiet moments. Someone who saw her, not just the uniform, not just the smile she wore for others. She wanted love, and by this point in her life, it didn't feel like a want. It felt like survival. That's what made her open the laptop one night and scroll through Facebook longer than usual. She almost shut it down. She almost convinced herself it wasn't worth it, that love belonged to younger people with fewer scars. But then, just as she hovered over the log off button, a new message appeared. "Hello, beautiful." It was simple, ordinary words. But for Nicole, sitting alone in the glow of her screen, They cut through the silence like a voice in the dark. And it's here that her story turns. Because the very thing she longed for, the chance to be seen, to be loved, was about to open a door she could never close again. It began with a message that didn't feel like a message. It felt like a lifeline. By February 2017, Nicole had been scrolling through Facebook late at night, half searching for distraction, half searching for something she couldn't name. That's when his profile appeared, Oyewafemi Adewale, but everyone called him Femi. His page was a careful gallery of virtue, photos of him handing out food to children in Lagos, tagged in church gatherings, even short clips where he spoke about resilience and faith. His captions read like scripture braided with poetry. Pain births strength, and strength births destiny. To a woman like Nicole, tired of men who had broken promises and shattered trust, his words felt tailored, almost divinely arranged. At first it was a like, then a comment. Within days, their exchanges shifted to private messages. By the second week, Femi's presence threaded itself into Nicole's nights. He called when the house was quiet, his voice low and steady through her phone speaker, as if the ocean between Maryland and Lagos was only an illusion. He laughed easily, listened closely, and when silence lingered, he filled it with affirmations. You deserve happiness, Nicole. Don't let the world tell you otherwise. Nicole felt herself soften. She noticed how he seemed to know when to reach out, just as she was preparing dinner alone or after a rough day at work. It wasn't random. It was precision. She convinced herself it was fate. Then came the roses. A dozen, long-stemmed, crimson, left at her door on a windy Tuesday evening. She had never told him her exact address. Not directly. But he knew. When she opened the box, a wave of scent filled the kitchen. Rich, sweet, and overwhelming. She stood there for a long time, torn between gratitude and unease. How could a man thousands of miles away orchestrate this? How could he afford it? She wondered briefly, but she didn't ask. Instead, she placed the flowers in a vase by the window, telling herself she was finally being seen. Her closest friend noticed the shift. Nicole had a glow in her voice, a rhythm in her step, but also a growing dependence on that blinking notification icon. One night, during a whispered phone call, Nicole leaned in and confessed, I think I've finally found him. He wanted privacy, so he requested for her number. She was so happy to have him to herself now, as she believed. When the conversations shifted from the open space of Facebook to the more private world of WhatsApp, something in Nicole's life shifted too. What had started as casual messages soon became ritual. Morning greetings, goodnight prayers, short video calls in the middle of her workday, where his voice filled the quiet corners of her routine. To Nicole, it felt like stability. In a life that had often been marked by disappointments, here was someone who seemed dependable, never missing a call, never forgetting a word of comfort. He didn't just reply. He anticipated her. A good morning text arrived before her alarm. How was your day? Landed before she even closed her laptop. What looked like affection was, in truth, construction. Reliability was being built, brick by brick, until she believed she could lean her whole heart on it. But there was another pattern hiding beneath the warmth. Whenever talk veered toward the practical, his work, his income, his ability to travel, Femi danced around the questions. He would pivot, talking instead about the future they would share, the dreams they would build together, how he wanted to give her a life without worries. It wasn't a refusal. It was softer than that, an elegant sidestep that made her feel cherished even as it left her questions unanswered. Nicole's daughter, Ira, noticed first. At the kitchen table one evening, Nicole admitted she had met someone. She said it with a glow in her face that Ira hadn't seen in years. But when Nicole played one of Femi's voice notes, his accented words full of promises, Ira frowned. Mom, you don't know this man. You don't know where he is, what he does. People lie on the internet every day. Nicole brushed it off. He's real, Ira. He's different. You'll understand when you see how he cares for me. That divide between a mother's hopeful heart and a daughter's sharp instinct would only grow. Nicole believed she had found a man who finally saw her worth. Ira believed her mother was drifting into something dangerous. And then came the first real test. On one late-night call, Femi lowered his voice and said words that clung to Nicole long after she hung up. "I cannot come to America, but maybe you can come to me." The suggestion was simple, almost tender, but beneath it lived the first shadow of risk. For Nicole, it sounded like love moving forward. Nicole packed her bags 2 weeks before the flight, her small apartment in Maryland swallowed by piles of neatly folded clothes and the trinkets she swore would make Femi smile. American sneakers, cologne, even a box of chocolates she had rationed from her last grocery trip. She wasn't just bringing luggage. She was bringing proof that this love was real, tangible, worth every mile she was about to travel. Her friends didn't see it that way. One asked bluntly, "Nicole, do you even know this man?" "Facebook is one thing, Lagos is another." Another pleaded, "Please, at least tell someone where you'll be staying. Don't just vanish into another country." Nicole laughed them off, masking her own nervous pulse. "It's adventure," she said. "You all think I can't handle myself." What she didn't admit was that every warning stung, because a small part of her wondered if they might be right. But she silenced that part with the thought of Femi's messages, the way he typed her name like it was sacred, the late-night video calls where his face filled her phone and his voice promised forever. The flight to Lagos felt endless. Hours of turbulence, crying children, the hum of jet engines pressing on her nerves. She barely slept, instead rehearsing what she would say when she saw him. Would she run into his arms like in the movies? Or stand shyly, letting him close the gap? When the plane finally touched down, the door opened to a wall of humid air, hot and sticky against her skin. The airport was a storm of sound, shouts in Yoruba and English, cab drivers calling prices, the clatter of luggage wheels. Sweat trickled down her back as she scanned the crowd, clutching her passport like a lifeline. And then, there he was, Femi, a bouquet of red roses in his hand, a wide smile that seemed to push all the chaos into the background. For a moment, the noise fell away. He was taller than she imagined, his voice deeper when he said her name. Nicole felt her chest loosen, as though every sacrifice, every doubt, had been worth this single embrace. That first night blurred into something like a fairy tale. A modest guest house, dinner he swore was cooked just for her, and hours of whispered promises. Nicole believed it, believed him. She lay awake afterward, staring at the ceiling fan, circling lazily above, thinking, this is love. This is how it's supposed to feel. He made love to her that night the way she has never experienced before. She was screaming everything. Every name she had in her mind before was erased, and the only one remaining was Femi, and it was there to stay. But even as she drifted into sleep, something else lingered, an unease she couldn't name. The next morning, he kissed her forehead and said, "Today, I'll take you to my special place. A place only for the two of us." Nicole smiled, but the words didn't echo the way she expected. Special place. For the first time since landing, she wondered, was she being carried deeper into a dream, or into something she could no longer escape? Nicole thought she had stepped into another life. Lagos unfolded before her like a dream. Beaches that stretched endlessly, markets alive with color and noise, and laughter that spilled from Femi's circle of friends, as though she had always belonged. For the first time in years, she felt untethered. No longer the anxious daughter from Maryland with cautious parents and judgmental friends. Here, she was radiant, reborn, and Femi knew exactly how to keep her in that glow. He introduced her as his queen, holding her hand a second too long in public, locking eyes with her in ways that made every warning from back home dissolve. But love, when it comes this fast, demands sacrifice, and Nicole started making them. When friends from Maryland called, she stopped picking up. "You don't get it," she muttered once, staring at her phone. "This is real. He's real." The more they doubted him, the more determined she became to prove them wrong. Femi, of course, never pushed too hard. His genius was in suggestion. "You should see how much land goes for here. Imagine us building together," he'd say while pointing out coastal plots on late-night drives. We could start small. A house. A business. Our future. He made the talk of money sound like poetry, like devotion itself. Nicole never saw it as manipulation. She saw it as a man dreaming with her. And for the first time, she began to picture their wedding. Not in Maryland, but here, under Nigerian skies. Still, even in the haze of joy, there were moments that felt staged. Sometimes she caught Femi's friends exchanging glances when the subject of planning came up. Sometimes his praise of her generosity felt rehearsed. But she brushed it off. And then, one evening, as they watched the sun sink into the Atlantic, Femi's voice dropped. "Before we marry," he said slowly, as if weighing each word, "there's someone you must meet." Nicole smiled, expecting family, maybe a blessing from an elder. But Femi's tone carried a heaviness she couldn't quite name. The next morning they set off on the journey to a village in Oyo State. Nicole had been in Nigeria for about a month now, and she had been having the time of her life. The road narrows as Femi drives Nicole deep into the countryside. The city lights vanish. Only the faint glow of kerosene lamps flicker through the trees. The air smells of wood smoke and damp earth. Nicole leans closer to him, uneasy but silent, as if speaking her fear aloud might make it real. They stop before a small mud-walled structure, its doorway draped in palm fronds. Inside, shadows shift against the glow of candles. Carved wooden masks line the walls, their hollow eyes seeming to follow her every move. Nicole's chest tightens. She whispers, "What is this place?" Femi smiles, too calmly, too firmly. "It is part of us. Part of you now. My people must welcome you." Inside, a man draped in crimson cloth emerges. His face is marked with white chalk, his movements slow, deliberate. He carries a small calabash bowl, filled with a dark liquid that smells of herbs and iron. He chants in Yoruba, each syllable heavy, echoing against the mud walls. Nicole doesn't understand the words, but the rhythm feels commanding, like a drumbeat pressing into her veins. The man lifts the bowl to her lips. Nicole's instinct is to step back. Her hands tremble. Something inside her screams that this is wrong. But Femi's voice cuts through her hesitation. "Drink. It is our blessing. For us to be one, you must." Nicole freezes. She searches his eyes for warmth, but all she finds is expectation, a weight disguised as tradition. She feels trapped between fear and the desire to keep his love. Slowly, she lifts the bowl. The liquid burns down her throat. It is bitter, metallic. She coughs, nearly gagging, but the man steadies her. Her body shudders. The walls seem to tilt. Sounds stretch, blur, echo. She gasps, "What's happening to me?" Femi takes her hand, squeezing tighter than comfort allows. His words come soft, almost soothing, but edged with finality. "Now you are bound. Whatever I ask, you'll give. That is love." Her vision fades at the edges. Her voice, fragile, almost foreign to her, slips out, "Whatever you want, Femi." Nicole began to change in ways no one could quite explain. The ritual Femi performed had left her subdued, almost hollowed out. Where she had once questioned decisions, she now accepted instructions as if they were her own thoughts. It started small. He told her to skip lunch so she could save money for their future plans. She obeyed. He asked her to stop wearing certain colors because they attracted jealous spirits. She folded those dresses away without hesitation. Soon, she was no longer making choices. She was following orders. The shift was gradual, but unmistakable. When Femi spoke, she nodded before he even finished. When he paused, she rushed to fill the silence with approval. She wasn't Nicole anymore. She was an echo of his voice. Then came the money. Femi framed it as necessity. "We must clear your energy of debts before we can build wealth together," he whispered. Nicole didn't argue. She opened her accounts and handed him her rent money. Retirement savings were transferred to protect them from spiritual attack. He told her their love required sacrifice, and she agreed. Each withdrawal tightened the invisible rope around her life. Nicole's mind searched for justifications. She told herself this was love. That partner's sacrifice for each other. That financial struggles now meant spiritual prosperity later. She even imagined herself lucky, that Femi cared enough to guide her. What looked like obedience from the outside, she explained away as devotion from within. But outside observers saw something different. To the world, Nicole was just making odd decisions. To Femi, she was completely bound. The binding wasn't just financial, it was emotional. He convinced her to cut ties with anyone who questioned him. They don't understand us, he'd say. Their doubts poison your spirit. Nicole complied. Phone calls to old friends went unanswered. Invitations were ignored. Her world narrowed until Femi was the center, and everything else blurred into background noise. And then came the call that cracked the illusion. Her daughter phoned late one evening. She expected her mother's warmth, the familiar cadence of her voice. Instead, what came through the line sounded foreign, flat, monotone, almost mechanical. "Mom, are you okay?" the daughter asked, her tone sharpening with worry. Nicole insisted she was fine, that she was happy. But even in those reassurances, her daughter heard something deeply wrong. It was as if her mother were reading from a script, her words stripped of emotion. The daughter pressed harder. "Mom, is someone with you? Can you tell me the truth?" Nicole hesitated. In that silence, her daughter swore she heard a faint voice in the background. A man's voice, low and commanding. Nicole rushed to end the call. Her daughter dropped the phone and burst into tears. That wasn't her mother on the line. At least, not the woman she had always known. And for the first time, the daughter considered something terrifying. If Nicole couldn't even speak freely anymore, what else had she already lost? Then Nicole traveled back to Maryland to start a new life with her newfound love Femi. Imagine a household where the air feels thinner by the day. The walls that once held laughter now seemed to echo with a silence so sharp it stings. This was the reality for Nicole's family in the months that followed Femi's arrival. Her daughter Ira noticed it first in the smallest ways. Nicole's speech patterns changed. She started using phrases Femi used, sharp, clipped, almost rehearsed. When she answered her phone, she no longer said hello in her warm, sing-song tone. Instead, she barked a curt yes. When friends stopped by unannounced, Nicole no longer invited them in. She'd stand at the door, her shoulders angled away, eyes flicking back toward the living room where Femi sat. The woman who once over-explained everything now explained nothing. It was as if her voice had been rerouted, her personality rewritten. Meanwhile, investigators in the U.S. were beginning to take notice. Several wire transfers moved from Nicole's small business account to a Nigerian shell company tied to stolen identities. Each transaction was just under the reporting threshold, calculated, deliberate. To the banks, this was a pattern too precise to be coincidence. When Nicole was summoned to explain the activity, she arrived with paperwork that had clearly been prepared for her. The investigators noticed she flipped through the files as if she was reading them for the first time. They asked her questions about suppliers, addresses, contacts. Her answers never strayed from the same script, always ending with the same phrase. "It's all legitimate. My partner handles the details." That word, partner, wasn't just financial. For Ira, the horror wasn't just watching her mother defend Femi. It was watching her mother erase herself. She'd sit across the table at dinner, listening to Nicole praise Femi's business genius, though only months earlier Nicole had laughed at his broken promises. The change wasn't just loyalty. It was obedience. One night, Ira heard muffled voices through her mother's bedroom door. Femi's tone was sharp, his cadence deliberate, like a teacher drilling a student. Nicole's responses were short, mechanical, as though she was repeating lines. Aaliyah pressed her ear closer and caught fragments. "Never question. Don't speak to them again. We don't need anyone else." It chilled her to realize these weren't arguments. They were lessons. The pull on Nicole grew stronger as the outside world tried harder to intervene. Old friends texted. Coworkers knocked. Ira even confided in her grandmother, who begged Nicole to step back and rethink. But every time someone tried, Nicole pushed them further away. She wasn't just protecting Femi. She was defending a new version of herself that only existed in his presence. The pressure reached a breaking point when federal agents contacted her directly. They warned her. She was entangled in wire fraud. Her name was on documents that could ruin her life. Any mother would panic. Any businesswoman would demand answers. But Nicole, she showed no fear. Instead, she snapped, "You don't understand. Femi knows what he's doing. He protects me." Ira couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her mother wasn't afraid of the law. She was afraid of losing him. The turning point came during a late-night call with a childhood friend. Ira overheard her mother whisper into the phone, her words trembling. "I can't see you anymore. Please don't call me. Femi says I have to choose, and I've chosen him." Then the line went dead. The next morning, Femi's voice carried through the house. He wasn't shouting, but the weight of his words pressed down like a locked door. "If you love me, you'll cut them off. All of them. Family, friends, anyone who doubts us. If you want to build a future, they cannot exist." Nicole didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply nodded. Ira watched this exchange from the hallway, her body frozen, her stomach twisting with dread. It was the moment she understood the truth. Her mother wasn't being convinced anymore. She was being commanded, and she was obeying. The family had lost Nicole to something deeper than fraud or lies. They had lost her to control. And the question that haunted Ira most was this. If her mother could sever ties with the people who loved her most, what else could Femi make her do? And what did he do to her? After some months in America, Femi travels back to Nigeria for some business with her. But this time he had already put things in motion to drain her finances completely. And no one would hear from Nicole for the next 7 months. Meanwhile, detectives were already on the case. The case was no longer local. Nicole's disappearance had begun in suburban Maryland, but now it stretched across continents, carried by whispers of money transfers and cryptic photographs. Detective Marcus knew this was not a search that could be handled within state borders. He reached out to the U.S. Embassy in Lagos, a place where countless fraud investigations landed in dusty folders. The embassy officials were polite but slow, burdened by bureaucracy and a backlog of similar pleas. To them, Nicole was one more American woman who had fallen in love online and gone missing overseas. To Marcus, she was a daughter, a nurse, a human being with a family desperate for answers. Through back channels, he learned the truth. Within 6 weeks, over $150,000 had drained from Nicole's accounts. The trail was clean at first, legitimate bank wires, names that looked real, but the deeper investigators dug, the more the picture warped. Some accounts existed only on paper. Others traced back to shell companies tied to internet cafes in Lagos. Each lead split into 5 more, a web carefully spun to exhaust anyone chasing it. Back in Maryland, Nicole's friends scrolled through Femi's social media posts. They saw her in brightly patterned Nigerian attire, sitting beside smiling aunties and cousins. But those who knew her best noticed the details others missed. The stiffness in her shoulders, the absence of her natural laugh. One photo showed her hand resting on her lap. Her best friend whispered through tears, "That's Nicole's scared hand. She always holds it like that when she's anxious." The embassy confirmed the suspicion. Femi wasn't acting alone. He had accomplices, fake friends hired for photographs, rented family members who posed as blood relatives, even a pastor who blessed their so-called union for stage pictures. What Nicole thought was love had been orchestrated with precision. Every smile, every embrace, every gesture was part of an illusion, a crime built not with weapons but with emotions. For the detectives, the question turned coldly forensic. Could love itself be treated as evidence? Could the very messages Nicole once clung to, "Though I miss you" texts, the late-night calls, the promises of marriage, now be entered into the record as proof of fraud and coercion? It was a cruel inversion. Intimacy becoming testimony, affection repurposed as evidence of betrayal. Tension mounted between the two systems of justice. Maryland detectives wanted swift answers, but the embassy warned of delays. Nigerian banks were reluctant to cooperate, some fearing scandal, others quietly complicit in looking away. Behind every request for documents was another form to sign, another official to persuade. Each delay meant more time lost, and more fear that Nicole's trail was going cold. Then came the break. One Lagos bank teller, a young man who had processed some of the wire transfers, stepped forward quietly. He requested to speak off the record, his eyes darting nervously toward the manager's office. He lowered his voice and told an embassy investigator, "I know this man. He comes here often. He is not who you think he is." The teller leaned back, his words hanging heavy in the room. "And he's not working alone. There are others, bigger than him. If you keep following the money, you'll see. But be careful. These people, they don't just scam. They make people disappear." The file on Nicole's case was never marked solved. Instead, it was closed with a quiet stamp. Unresolved. Insufficient evidence. On paper, it looked like just another fraud investigation gone cold. But to the detectives who had traced her money across oceans, who had stared at the faces of accomplices in Lagos cafes and bank lobbies, it was a wound left open. One investigator later admitted, off record, "We knew he'd do it again." But without her testimony, our hands were tied. Nicole never testified, not because she didn't want justice, but because justice, in her eyes, had already failed her long before the embassy meetings, long before the bank trails. By the time officials came asking, she was too broken, financially, emotionally, spiritually. Her silence was not apathy. It was exhaustion. In her Maryland home, she shut blinds that once welcomed sunlight. Friends said the house became darker, her voice smaller. The once confident woman who dreamed of second chances now moved through rooms like a guest in her own life. Bills stacked. Creditors called. And still, she said very little. The shame was a weight heavier than the debt itself. Her daughter noticed it most. She recalled evenings where her mother would sit at the kitchen table, staring at papers but never picking up a pen. When asked what she was thinking, Nicole only replied, "How did I let this happen?" And that question, how, wasn't just Nicole's. It was the question haunting the detectives, the question echoing in every viewer's mind. How does love, something so intimate and hopeful, transform into evidence of crime? Because that's what the investigators kept. Not fingerprints or DNA, but screenshots of messages once whispered like prayers. Bank transfers labeled as gifts. Photographs of stage families smiling in Lagos living rooms. Love itself cataloged as forensic proof. And yet, none of it brought closure. When the case was finally shelved, one Nigerian bank teller offered the last thread of truth. "I know this man. He'll be back. Just in another form, with another name." Nicole's story was not the end of him. It was just one chapter in a network of shadows stretching farther than borders could contain. But what of Nicole? She lived on, though her life was split in two, before him and after him. She did not regain the money. She did not regain the friends who had distanced themselves, tired of warning her against a love they never believed in. What she regained, slowly, painfully, was clarity. She began to understand that fraud is not just about stolen dollars. It is about stolen identity, stolen trust, stolen years. And that theft leaves scars deeper than bank accounts. For her daughter, the lesson became generational. She once told a reporter, "My mom taught me to never let loneliness make me blind, to ask harder questions, to remember that real love doesn't come with invoices." The case file may remain unsolved, but Nicole's silence became its own testimony, a cautionary tale for others who scroll late at night, searching for comfort in glowing screens. And so, we are left with a lesson no courtroom could deliver. Love can be both the strongest currency and the most dangerous weapon. And the haunting question remains. When affection can be manufactured, when intimacy can be scripted and sold, how can any of us be sure the next voice we trust isn't the beginning of our own undoing?